Growing up, I had a lot of great friends growing up in Aurelia. I come from a big family. I have four sisters and two brothers. My brother's Jimmy. Jimmy is dedicated to his work, hard worker. He's been a teacher for a long, long time, 28, 29, 30 years. And just a hard worker. Everything that he wants to do, he'll get it done. That's my oldest brother, Jimmy. And such a great guy. He always stuck up for me when I was a little kid, especially when my brother, Mikey, would pick on me and make me do things I didn't want to do. Jimmy would step in and stop it. Mikey is a hard worker. He's dedicated in everything he does, too. Just keeps on working. Hard worker. Back in the days, back in high school, I always remember my brother Mikey. You really didn't mess with him. He was a street fighter. He would fight you no matter how big you were. And 99% of the time he would win. That was my brother Mikey. He was a great football player, just like my brother Jimmy. Mikey is hard worker, like I said, dedicated to everything he does. He's got, hold on for a sec. He's got, three kids? Let's see. No, four kids. My brother Jimmy, by the way, Mikey lives in Cherokee. My brother Jimmy has one kid, Spencer, married to Stacy. And Jimmy was also a great football player. And the weird thing about it, my brother, both Jimmy and Mikey, were both hurt their senior year in football, and I never was. They went through their injuries their senior year, kind of one of those curse things, but I had no problems my senior year. So that's my brothers. Now I have four sisters. My oldest sister is Kimmy. Kimmy has, let's see here, Jamie, April, and Casey. And of course she's married to John Seal. And they live in Norwalk, and Kimmy is a hard worker. I always remember growing up, my sister Kimmy was the troublemaker for my parents. She would get home early in the morning and get yelled at and all that good stuff, but we live and learn. And Kimmy is a caring person. She loves her grandkids, and she's a great person. Now, my sister Connie, she lives down in Enid, Oklahoma, and she has two kids. Kelsey, who lives down in Oklahoma, Enid, and then of course you have Cody, who was a former Marine, and he had 2 tours of duties in Iraq, and now he's making home in Chicago. He goes to college, goes to school, and that's Cody. And Cody's a very successful guy and a very great, caring-hearted guy. Kelsey is also caring. She's got 2 kids, Cream and Kane, and they live down in Enid, Oklahoma. Now, my sister Carla, on the other hand, by the way, Connie's a hard worker too. We're pretty much all hard workers. My sister Carla, she had triplets. They end up with 5 girls. She's married to Chester Cates, and they live here in Cherokee. And Carla's the manager at Taco John's here in Cherokee. Carla's a hard worker. Her daughters, all 5 of her daughters, Kendra, Britt, Brianne, Jill, and Whitney, they definitely look up to their mom. They'd be lost without their mom. Carla and Chester have numerous grandkids, and they love Grandma and Grandpa. Carla's definitely a hard worker too. My sister Tammy, she used to work at Baumgar's. Tammy, back in the day, she didn't mess with her. I learned the hard way a lot. We'd box in the yard out front, and I'd get my butt kicked 99% of the time by her because she was mean, and she would grab you by your hair, and then you'd have to tap out. Tammy has 2 kids, Skylar and McKenna, and Skylar has a daughter, that she just had. They just had a baby, and not too long ago. And McKenna, she's going to Iowa State University, and I'm not quite sure what grade she's in, a junior or something like that. So McKenna is a very caring person, and I got a cat that wants to get in on my business right now. So anyway, that's my sister Tammy. Tammy ran into some health problems with her back and so on and so forth, and she does the best that she can in everyday living. We all know how it feels to suffer, but Tammy knows how to suffer more than most of us. So I got some great brothers and sisters, 4 sisters and 2 brothers, and I had a sister pass away when she was born, and that's Bonnie, and she was Connie's twin. And so we would have had 8 kids, but Bonnie passed away when she was born. My parents, of course, you're watching this, you probably know them, Jim and Karen Mazzoni. They live in Aurelia. Dad's lived in Aurelia pretty much the same house pretty much all of his life since he was a little kid. Dad is, I'm trying to think, 74, and Mom is 73. Mom, back in 91, 92, had a massive brain tumor. She went through 24 hours of surgery up in Rochester, and she lived to tell the story. And she's a tough old granny. We call her Nana B. And I mean, the sky's the limit with my mom. She's a very caring person, and of course, she's always fun to be around, and she's a rock for our family. And then my dad, he is 74. He's been a mechanic pretty much all of his life, and he's a great dad. Here in the last couple of years, I've really got to know my dad a lot, and he kind of influenced me a little bit to get on this journey of health and losing weight. And other than that, I have great parents, and if you know my parents, you know what I'm talking about. I always can remember as a kid, we always had a bunch of people over. It'd be too numerous to mention how many kids ate at our house, stayed at our house. It was just a place to be. The Mazzoni house was a place to be. So, yeah, my parents are pretty cool. Dad was a little grumpy growing up, but he had a lot on his plate. Mom was a hard worker. She worked at Sunset Knoll in Aurelia. And, of course, my dad owned the gas station in Aurelia for a while. I can recall him working at Peaster Derby as a manager for a long time. He worked at Holzhauer Motors. He was a manager at Weiss Oil. Just all over the place. So then he retired from Sunset Knoll over in Aurelia. Mom, after a brain tumor, had to obviously retire. She couldn't work after that. But that's my parents. That's my family in a nutshell. So great family. I have just numerous nieces and nephews. And if I had my shirt with me, I could tell you who they all are. But my shirt is out there, so all I can say is just numerous nieces and nephews, and we have a huge family. So it's always interesting when family reunions or Christmas or whatever we get together for. It's always an interesting scenario when we get together. So anyway, that's my family in a nutshell, and friends growing up. Had a lot of friends, had a lot of great friends growing up. I can recall Chad and Michael Lewis. Chad and Michael were my best friends for a long, long time, and I still consider them one of my top friends. I'll always have. That's Chad and Michael Lewis. I think Michael is in, I don't know where Michael's at these days, Algona or something like that. Michael's a good guy. Haven't ran into Michael in a long time. Chad, he lives outside of Larrabee. He's a farmer, and them two were pretty much my best friends growing up. And then I had a great best friend, and we met back in 5th or 6th grade, and they moved to Aurelia because their mom married a guy from Aurelia. And I don't know, you're probably watching this, you probably know who I'm talking about. And he turned out to be one of my great friends of all time. It's Bob Hoops. Bob back in 5th or 6th grade. I always remember us. He'd always say, we always liked to go down to the back bar and play Donkey Kong, or we'd go to the arcade and play pinball. And if it wasn't for Bob, we wouldn't go because he always went and took, $5-10 out of his banking account, and he'd always get in trouble for doing that. But I just wanted to take a moment just to hit on some of my friends. And Bob, I'll never forget this story, is when his brother Jim had, of course, committed suicide. And I remember waking up, I don't know what grade I was in, 8th or freshman or something like that, going in to be a freshman or something like that. And I remember waking up about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I look over, and Bob was sitting next to my bed. And Bob was just sitting there crying. And I said, Bob, what's going on? What's going on? He said, it's Jim, my brother. And I said, why? What's going on with Jim? He's dead. And I'm like, what? And make a long story short, Jim had committed suicide. And I was the first one that Bob came to and told me that his brother had died. And I remember that day, Bob and I walked down to Casey's, and we grabbed something to eat at Casey's. We walked down to Casey's, got some food, went back to the park, and sat on a picnic table, and we talked. We just kept on talking about his brother and life and so on and so forth. And Bob and I were inseparable for a long, long time. Bob would always be there for you. He was a great guy, and when he was with you, you knew nobody was going to mess with you because Bob didn't know his own strength. And Bob was always also good friends with Chad and Michael. And sometimes I regret some of the things that I did to Bob. And Bob, he passed away the same night I ended up in the hospital with a broken ankle. And he took his life in a car wash. During high school, I just lost touch with him. And I really never got to really talk to him after that. I saw him around town when I moved to Cherokee, but I never talked to him. And I regret that, not talking to Bob anymore. And then when I found out that he had died, he had committed suicide, it hurt a lot. So never take your friends for granted, because one day they might be gone. And that's the same way with family too. And Bob did so much for me. Bob was always there for me. Bob cared for me. I cared for Bob. And regardless of what happened to us in high school, losing touch and never ever talking after that, that doesn't mean I don't love him. I miss him. I hope someday I get to meet him again in heaven. And it's just a sad story on what happened to him. So after his brother Jim had passed, that really affected Bob tremendously. And it was such a sad, sad story. So, Bob was a great friend of mine, one of my best friends of all time. And R.I.P. to Bob. And that's a tough one to kind of bear. And I don't know. It's a tough one. Had a lot of great friends. Chris Benson, Chad Benson, and we had a bunch of them. Joel Combs, Jeff Forcier. We just had friends all over. We had friend Bucker, Bill Williamson. They called him Bucker. He's gone now. We just had so many friends. We had the Peckensteiners, Heidi and Tia. We played kickball in front of their house. I always remember hanging out with Troy Morton. I remember hanging out with the Glinkies. I remember it was just so many friends that we had back in the days in Aurelia. So I just want to talk a little bit about my friends and family, and kind of go through the scenario that what I had growing up. So I miss those days. I miss those days when your friends were always there for you. them were the easy days. Them were the days where you know that your parents would always be there for you, and they still are, but you knew they were always going to be there for you. You knew your brothers were going to back you up. You knew your sisters were always going to be there for you. You always knew that your friends were going to be there for you regardless of what happened. Like, I always remember getting into fights with Michael Lewis, but that never changed that we were best friends. Regardless, we'd stay mad at each other for 2 days because we'd get into a fight. Next day, we'd be best friends again, and that's just the way it is. That's good times. That was the good times. Them were the good old days. We didn't know it at the time. So, anyway, I just want to make a little video to tell everybody, honor your friends. Never take your friends for granted. Never take your family for granted. It's just interesting to think about my old friends back in the days and how much I miss them. Some of them are gone, moved on, and some are still here with me, and that's about it. So I just wanted to share with you what my childhood was like, growing up with all my family and friends, and in Aurelia. I could write a book. I could have a movie about my life growing up with 4 sisters and 2 other brothers. And other than that, that's in a nutshell when I was a kid growing up in Aurelia. So anyway, honor your mother and father, love your brothers and sisters, and always, regardless, love your best friends that you had back in the days, even if you don't stay in touch these days, and maybe you had some that moved on to the other side. Never forget them. Take a moment today to think about them, and maybe you need to call up one of your friends and say, hey, what's up? So do that. Anyway, I'm going to end this, and once again, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. And like I said, thanks for watching. And I always put hashtag not bad for a fat guy. And everybody, like I said, subscribe. And I'm on Facebook. If you ever watch this, just search William J. Vizzoni. Friend me on Facebook. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Keep watching my videos. And I'll try to come up with some interesting videos to talk about throughout my life. Anyway, you can see my cat is too busy sleeping right now. And I'm going to end this sucker. God bless you. Jesus loves you. I love you. And thanks for watching. Bye-bye.